We're talking about The Great Race today, so you should push the button, Max! The Great Race is a 1965 film which is basically a live-action Wacky Races before the Wacky Races. And I was promised fencing, and I got fencing, but you know what, let's get into it. My name is Jill Bearup and I'm an actor combatant, which means I have taken exams in how to pretend to fight people on stage. Yes, it's a weird hobby, but I enjoy it. And the plot of The Great Race, such as it is, goeth thusly. The great Leslie, professional stuntman, decides that he's going to have a race, a great race, around the world, from New York to Paris, for the glory of the American motor car. Or something. His rival, Professor Fate, is determined to beat Leslie. He tries to beat him in their previous encounters. He tries to stop the race from happening in the first place. He sabotages the other competitors and tries to sabotage Leslie, etc. There's also this lady, Maggie Dubois, who basically blackmails her way into a journalist position by handcuffing herself to things and showing her stockings, I guess. Regardless, she wants to join the race with Leslie, but he turns her down, so she gets herself another car. But it's really not up to a round-the-world jaunt and breaks down. The race continues, shenanigans ensue, Maggie and Leslie fall in love, and also there are sword fights. More than one. I was expecting a big fight in The Great Race, and there are several, my favourite of which involves pies, but there are two sword fights, and the first is a short but supposedly flirty sword fight between Maggie and Leslie, and the second is between Leslie and the Baron. Who is the Baron and why didn't you mention him previously? Look, it's a very long film, okay? I'll get to that. The first sword fight, which is between Maggie and Leslie in a tent somewhere in the desert, took me by surprise. I was not expecting it, but I watched with some interest because I do love a good flirty sword fight. I'm just quite picky about them. Unrelated side note, Natalie Wood's outfits in this movie, 10 out of 10, all of them are superb and I love them so much. I didn't love this fight very much, but it is a useful precursor to the sword fight near the end, so let's do this. Maggie has ridden on a horse in the desert to the tent of the great Leslie to ask him for a job, basically. He has turned her down since he has loyal Hezekiah as his second. They argue about women's rights or something, and then she tries to impress him with her achievements, including the fact that she won the Women's International Fencing Competition. And they fight, while still holding their champagne coupes, obviously. I've just had an idea. This... two swords. We start with an engagement, laser touching, in cis, which is when the sword is over this side of your body, as opposed to in cut, when it's over here, or octave or septimer. There are a few. The thing about engagement in cis is that it's very easy if your opponent decides to thrust directly at you. It doesn't take much to take their point offline. This is a very standard starting position for stage combat, but also, you know, just for foil fencing generally, because if you're going to invite someone to stab you, you should probably have a plan for what you're going to do after that. There is no harm in starting out conservatively, in a way that you can't hit them very easily, but also they can't hit you very easily. Leslie, the gold sword in this case, starts with a change beat, so he goes under Maggie's sword, beats it, and then just comes back to where he started. You can perform a change beat to knock your opponent's blade out of the way before you do something else, or just to see if they do anything. This is a see if you do anything kind of situation. And she responds by doing exactly the same thing. So her blade goes under, beat, and then we go back. Note that nobody has moved their feet at all at this point. There's a change of camera angle, and Maggie performs another change beat, but this time she knocks Leslie's blade out of the way and follows it up with an attack. To 4. Do I need to get out Pierce? I feel like we need to get out Pierce. This is Pierce, or Count Pierce Not Deface, if you want his full name, because my subscribers are funny people. And he is my main model for stage combat targets. Fencers should look away now, because as you can see, we number them differently, and also, they aren't even in French. 4, as you can see, is this area here. So, change beat, thrust for 4, Leslie parries and goes for her 4, she parries and goes for his 4. There's a lot of 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. And then Maggie does a little circle with her blade for no apparent reason, and we return to our neutral stance. I feel like the pattern of 4s is basically the knife sharpening of foil fights. Knife sharpening is what fight director Jeff Palmer calls it when you have cutting weapons and you just do lots of overhead diagonal cuts, which are then parries. So someone attacks your 5, and then you hit their 5, and then they attack your 5, and then you hit their 5, and it looks very dynamic, and it's not very difficult to choreograph. Back to a shot of Leslie and Maggie, blades in absence this time, which means they are not touching each other. Maggie does a little disengage and then a hopping advance, and then another advance. I get the feeling that because they're operating in a limited space, that's supposed to be an advance and then a lunge, but there isn't really room to lunge, so it just looks like a little hop and then another little hop. Anyway, she thrusts for 3 and is parried, and then Leslie brings both their blades down into a gosh, we're too intimately close together kind of situation. I mean, as I told you, it's supposed to be a flirty fight, I think. I mean, these are the two love interests of the film, but I'm just not feeling it. They have some chemistry, and it's better in later parts of the film, but at the minute I'm just like, they perform a quarter turn, resume a more reasonable fencing distance, and then we go 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. How many times can you say 4 before it starts to sound strange? Maggie then performs the most unenthusiastic lunge ever straight at Leslie's face, which he doesn't parry until the motion is completed. And then he does a wild sweeping 2, even though it's right in front of his face, and she was out of distance anyway. And that parry is performed with such force that he knocks her sword right out of her hand. Pushes her backwards onto the bed, I guess, makes a disparaging comment.
Now, if you'd won the men's international fencing competition.
End of fight. I don't love it. It feels a bit pointless. We're in a farcical film, and the way that Maggie moves is definitely farcical, but it doesn't really work for me. Mostly, I think, because I feel like the character work behind it is just lacking. Like, there are 2 of you alone in a tent, there's champagne and swords, and yet Now, Maggie does cover much more ground while she's attacking than Leslie does, which makes sense because she is the person who instigated the fight, she is the one with something to prove. But she's not actually aggressive at all. She attacks, but she doesn't really press the attack, she doesn't keep going when something doesn't work, or alternatively, when something doesn't work, she doesn't retreat to a safe distance, she just does a thing and then stops. Now, to be strictly fair here, that is something that I have trouble with when I'm fencing as well, because I'm used to stage combat where if it hasn't been choreographed, you shouldn't be doing it. So I will often think, I'm going to do this thing, and then I'll do it, and then I just have to get out of the way really sharpish because it didn't work and now I don't know how to follow it up. If you're thinking, gosh Jill, you don't really sound like you're very good at fencing, then yeah, you'd probably be right about that. But you know, we're here to have fun, and we're always learning, right? But from a character choreography perspective, this really jars. Maggie is supposed to be an independent woman, or is the joke that she's not? Maggie is the kind of woman who handcuffs herself to the door of the men's loo to get a job at the newspaper, who won the International Women's Fencing Competition, allegedly, and yet she doesn't seem like she's trying to win. We expect the nonchalant hanging about from Leslie, who's standing there in his impeccable white outfit that doesn't get dirty until very much later in the movie. But Maggie? I'd expect Maggie to have a bit more go about her, but there's such a lack of intention there that it really seems to fall flat. Is her being bad at fencing meant to be the joke? If the joke was meant to be women can't sword fight, then she would need to be worse at it. Because she's not bad, she's just not good either. And so it sort of falls in this weird middle place, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing, and if so, at what? I'm not saying that she has to be the kind of fencer who bounces around like a hyperactive squirrel, but, you know, some more intention would probably have helped. All in all, it's fine, I guess, but there just doesn't seem to be a clear purpose for it. It's not funny, it's not really flirty, and it doesn't really do anything to advance the plot, so I fail to see the point, pun fully intended. There is at least more reason for Leslie and the Baron to be fighting, even if that reason is we decided to turn into a parody of The Prisoner of Zenda in the last half hour of this movie. And yes, I didn't mention the Baron in the plot summary because he only turns up in the latter half of the film, and he's, well, his goal is that he's trying to replace the Prince of Carpania, who looks shockingly like Professor Fate, with Professor Fate, and thus stage a coup. And if you're thinking, what does this have to do with a race around the world? Very little. I guess they're in Carpania, and they have become embroiled in politics. Exactly what you need to round out the last 45 minutes of your slapstick film about a race around the world in fancy motor cars. The thing about it though is that it's not really a parody fight, it's a brief homage with a parody joke stuck at the end of it. There is a similar setup, we do get saber fighting, it's in a similar setting, but the main thing is that they want to set up this joke at the end.
Please excuse me, I have a boat waiting.
which is, to be fair, very funny. But that is pretty much where the references end. The original The Prisoner of Zenda fight is much longer and much more involved. There's a lot more stunt work, and there's a lot more things getting broken and stuff like that. Chair breaking, fireplaces, curtains. I did a review a little while ago of the Robin Hood Men in Tights fight between Robin and the Sheriff, and honestly, that one is more of an homage to the Prisoner of Zenda fight than this is. That said, choreography-wise, the Great Race's foil and then saber fight between the Baron and Leslie isn't bad at all. It's just, again, it goes on for quite a long time, and one sort of questions the point. That said, let's get into it. Please note the difference in the tone of these two sword fights right from the start. This one moves. Both of them are taking this extremely seriously, and they have room to maneuver. So even before anyone starts throwing cuts, thrusts, or whatever, they're moving their blades, they're trying to find an advantage before they begin. It is the Baron who finally attacks for Leslie's 3, that is, upper right quadrant. There follow a lot of attacks by both parties to 4 and 1. Some thrusts with an advance, and some things which are more lunge-like.
Very adroit, Mr. Leslie. Very skilled.
We also have some shadow fighting, because in The Adventures of Robin Hood they had shadow fighting, so why would you not? But again, it's a very serious sword fight in an otherwise slapstick funny movie, and yet there's nothing funny about the shadow fighting. It's just a, look what we did! Do you understand that reference? None of the fight is a joke, which is probably why it feels so weird and out of place in this very slapstick movie. Choreography-wise, they do a great job of making the foil fight seem dynamic, and that's more difficult when you have a weapon that's primarily thrusting rather than cutting. Cutting weapons kind of look dramatic regardless, but thrusting weapons, unless you change it up and try and do different things, can end up looking boringly pokey, even if they do take an awful lot of skill to do well.
Personally, I prefer a man's weapon. How are you with a saber?
Regardless, we decide to get out of foils and into sabers. The majority of the foil fight was still 4s and 1s, just this side, basically. But in the first phrase or two of the saber fight, the Baron attacks 3-2-3-2-3, Leslie attacks 1-3, we break, and then it's Leslie's turn, 4-2-4-2-4-2. Leslie parries 3, attacks 1, and then parries 5. In 2 phrases, we've basically gone the whole way around. Then there's a hoppity hop and a fleish. A fleish, not actually allowed when you're fencing saber in a regular sort of competition, but it's basically you stick your sword out and you run at your opponent, like you cross your feet over each other. This is a slightly sideways fleish, but it's very successful because it rips the Baron's shirt, which enrages him. Incidentally, you are allowed to cross your feet in foil and épée, so if you feel the need to do a dramatic fleish in those, knock yourself out. Or don't. And since it's a fight for your life, I don't think we can really blame Leslie for doing whatever works. Angry that Leslie has scored the first hit, the Baron then goes on the offensive and Leslie is forced to retreat, all the way to the stairs and then up them a bit. In the next phrase, the Baron's attack for 2 hits the ground and Leslie leaps like a half-naked gazelle over the banister. Obi-Wan Kenobi wishes to know why you ceded the high ground, Leslie, but whatever. They then fight using some more of the scenery around a pillar a bit and Leslie gets cut on the arm. Now things are serious. After a couple more attacks, we get some knife sharpening of the high-low variety, which, you know, I like it. And it's at this point that Leslie takes a different stance. While the Baron retains traditional saber stance for the entire fight, Leslie tends to go in and out of it. This may or may not have been intentional, but in the phrases when he's not in that hand-on-hip stance, they do tend to be the phrases in the middle where things aren't looking so good for him. So maybe it was on purpose? Who knows? We also get another fleish, or, you know, just running at this dude with a sword, because things are serious business now that Leslie has been hurt. There follow another couple of quite long phrases, relatively speaking, where they really go at it, until the Baron gets hit on the face, and it is at that point that you see him start to reconsider. They fight a bit more after that, but you can tell by the Baron's expression that he's looking for a way out, and he finds one. He leaps up to the window, says something dramatic, chucks the sword like he's in Prisoner of Zenda, and then dives out the window. I mean, I did laugh, but this is a very long section of seriousness to have to lead up to just that one joke. This scene is much more dynamic than the fight between Maggie and Leslie, and part of that's intentional, and part of that is the space in which they have to move, and part of it, I imagine, is because these two are decent stage fighters. And I have to say, it's very nicely executed. But I am forced to conclude that I agree with the critics of the time who watched this movie and thought, this is a bit of a weird mixed bag, right? Because some parts of it are really funny and sometimes the slapstick really lands. The pie fight, for example, is just hilarious. That bit when the Baron jumps out the window and crashes into the boat, amazing. A lot of the stuff with Professor Fate is also very funny, but there's also just a lot of, this part is okay, I guess. None of it's offensively awful or anything, but I didn't come out of The Great Race with a desire to watch all 2.5+ hours of it again anytime soon. Basically, it's similar to how I felt when I watched Blazing Saddles, albeit for a different reason. So when I did the Men in Tights review, I said I'd never seen Blazing Saddles, and there probably weren't any sword fights in it, but would you recommend it anyway? And about 99% of you said yes, so I watched it. And some of those jokes were just amazing. I really, really liked them. And some of the stuff was just sort of general slapstick, and that was fine too. But there were long stretches where I was thinking to myself, this has been set up like a joke. There's a beat here so I can laugh, but I don't understand what the joke is because I am not familiar with the Western genre. That said, the jokes I did laugh at were some of the best jokes I've seen in a Mel Brooks movie, though it is possible that Mel Brooks and I just don't have particularly overlapping senses of humour, but I did enjoy it, and it was funny. That said, if I had to watch it again, the bits that I would actually be interested in are basically all the bits with Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder as a double act, and maybe some of the bits with Madeline Kahn as well, because she's so tired. And frankly, I relate. The Great Race has okay sword fighting, but I would not recommend it for the sword fighting because it's weird and really out of place in the rest of the film. But, you know, it's not a bad film. I'm just not sure that I would recommend it to everybody. If you're really looking for a sword fight that throws back to The Prisoner of Zenda, but humorously, try Men in Tights. And if you're coming to meet me at Canterbury Waterstones on the 23rd of October, that's Canterbury in Kent, England, not any of the other Canterburys, say hi in the comments, let me know that you're coming. Also, have you bought a book? And if you haven't, you should, because then you can bring it and I can sign it. Also, we will be discussing the book, and if you haven't read it, then there might be spoilers and you might not like that. If you are in the southeast of England around the 23rd of October, there is a link in the pinned comment to the event. In other book-related news, we are closing in on 40,000 copies sold. 40,000! That is absolute madness. Thank you so much to everyone who has bought the paperback or the ebook or both. Hopefully I will have some audiobook news for you soon, which isn't I Think It's Cursed. For those of you wondering, what is your next video about? You're all over the place at the minute. That is a great question, but I'm all over the place at the minute, so I don't know. You will just have to wait and see. But thank you for watching this one anyway, and I'll see you soon.